So Justin's here with us this morning to share, both now and service to follow. And if you're interested, he has prayer cards in the back near Karen, and there's a sign-up sheet too if you're not already on their email list for their information. And Justin's going to come and share about their current ministry. I know most of you are familiar with Justin, but if there's a few that are not, as you know, Justin and Rebecca grew up in this church. They're missionaries with Grace Missions International. Justin's a graduate of Master's Seminary, holds 2 degrees, Master's of Divinity and a Master's of Theology. And he's also an ordained minister. So he's going to come and share their current ministry. And I think he's going to have a Q&A towards the end. So if there's questions, he can take those. So come and share with us, Justin. Thanks.
All right. Good morning. It's good to be with you all again. It's always such a blessing coming back to Grace Bible. So thank you for this opportunity. Just have a few slides for you all. As my dad said, I think all of you guys know us, but just in case you don't, here's all of our family. Normally they all come with me, but my oldest one, Audra, is away at winter camp with her Sunday school class. Our church has a winter camp for the 4th through 6th graders, so it's actually the first time she's been away with somebody other than a family member, so it's kind of, we're in that stage as parents, but we're really excited that she can do that. As Dad said, we served as your missionaries for 3 years in Lebanon, and as you may recall, we came back to the United States in 2019 to get some medical care for our boys. They have severe peanut allergies, which are becoming so common, but thankfully they have some new treatments that are able to desensitize children to peanuts, and so we found, it was such a blessing from the Lord, we found a good doctor down in Southern California, and I work at Grace Community Church down there, and they have really generous health insurance that paid for a lot of it. So we just finished that process a few months ago, and it's just such a load off our minds to have them be in a much safer position. It's not a cure. They have to eat a little bit of peanuts every day to keep their tolerance for it up, but it's just a real blessing for us, and so we feel more comfortable going back into ministry overseas. They just, in a lot of countries, they don't have the same mindset about, food packaging and things like that. You have to be real careful, but we don't have to have that concern as much. In Lebanon, we were serving with a team out there to start a new biblical training center to equip men with sound theology and faithful expository preaching. And the training center is doing well. I'm glad to say they're actually expanding down into Egypt. There's 2 more families that are raising support right now to go to Egypt. And so it's exciting for us to have been a part of that and to see the training center continuing on. We decided not to go back to Lebanon and during our time here, and started looking at other options that were out there, and one of those was the Philippines, and that's what I want to tell you all about this morning. We're going to be joining a new team that's based out of Manila, so I'll just introduce you to them. The team leader is Shawn Ransom, and there's his family, Shawn and Jessica Ransom. They've been in the Philippines since 2004, and they were just by themselves for a number of years serving there. They have 7 children, and you can see 4 of them there. They're actually in the States right now because their oldest son is married, and then the next 2 just got married this month. They wanted to do it all together since the family was over here, so it's been a busy time for them, for sure. But I've gotten to know Shawn a little bit when they were on furlough last year. Their furlough kept getting longer and longer because of all the travel problems and things like that, but it was nice for us to get to know them a bit. And he just has a real heart for ministry and people, and he's one of those kind of leaders that just always has new ideas. We could do this, and we could do this, and every time I meet with him, he has different options and things like that. But he's not the kind of like a flighty kind of person, though, that's going from one thing to the next. He has a very clear vision of what he wants to do, but a just very dynamic personality. And so I'm excited to work with him. And he has in particular a vision for the whole region around the Philippines. There's a lot of interaction between all the countries, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Another family that's out there is Alan and Sandy Luciano, and you can see they started in 2014. We were actually in seminary together. We didn't know them that well, but got to know them somewhat in seminary. And actually, Rebecca used to work for a school that Grace Community Church had before we had kids, and Sandy worked in accounting at Grace Church, and so they got to know each other a little bit that way. And we're just real thankful for them and their ministry out there. And then the third family is Devraj and Trishti Urs. They were also in seminary at the same time. So it's nice to have these connections with the team that's out there already. The Ransoms and the Lucianos serve in Manila, that's where they live, and Devraj and Trishti live in Davao City, which is in the south in the southern island of Mindanao. All right, I'll tell you a little bit about the Philippines. Actually, some of you have been there longer or more often than I have. I was talking to Dave a little bit, and he has some experience there. So if I get anything wrong, you can correct me. So here's kind of a region of Southeast Asia. You can see the Philippines if you're a little fuzzy on geography. It's just north of Indonesia. Don't get it confused with Japan. Every time like when we were going to Lebanon, I had to be very careful because there's all these little countries around there, and now it's islands. So that's where the Philippines is, and you can see how close it is to all these other countries, and that's something that's important for our ministry that I'll mention. And there you can see the location of the two different cities where the team is distributed. Now, the Philippines is made up of about a little more than 7,000 different islands. Not all of them have people on them, but a lot of them do. If you added up all of the area of the country, it's about the size of Arizona, the land area. But they have 110 million people, so it's like a third of the population of the U.S. in an area roughly the size of Arizona. So the population density is definitely pretty high. The weather is definitely going to be something that's new for us. Weather in Lebanon has a lot of similarity to California, actually, except a little more humid. But in the Philippines, I'm told they really only have about 2 seasons. You have the rainy season and the less rainy season. So that's going to be definitely an adjustment for us. But it's funny, our youngest one does not like to be cold at all. Like, she asks us to get the little space heater so she can get dressed in the morning, and the other ones aren't that way. So we're thinking, maybe she might really do well there with the humidity. Culturally, Filipinos are just well known around the world for being warm and hospitable. And just talking to the Ransoms, actually Jessica Ransom is from the Philippines, but she grew up in the United States, and so she kind of has one foot in both sides. And just talking to them was really helpful and encouraging because they just really enjoy the people there, and especially in the church with the body of Christ. The majority religion in the Philippines is Catholicism. Some of you may be seeing on the news around Easter time, they'll actually reenact the crucifixion as kind of like penance isn't the right word, but kind of like some kind of a strange kind of worship where they actually will crucify people and then take them down and dress their wounds, and it's kind of like I don't know what you call that, like where people beat themselves. Asceticism, like kind of an ascetic kind of practice. So it's very strong there. There's a lot of Protestant churches, but like a lot of places in the world, there's just a lot of cults. There's a lot of false religion. In fact, one of the largest, Catholicism that has the lion's share, but then there's another one. It's a cult that doesn't believe in the Trinity. It's a Unitarian kind of cult, and it's very popular in the Philippines. Has a lot of political influence there and things like that. And many of the evangelical pastors, they don't have a lot of training, they don't have a lot of opportunity for training, and so that's really why we're going there, why the team is there. And we're going to be joining a training center called the Expositors Academy, and it's part of under the umbrella of the Masters Academy International. Sorry, that's a lot of names, but This is the group that our training center in Lebanon has recently joined. You can actually see them right there. That's the one that we were at there in Lebanon. They got it a little too far north, I think. But so these are all the training centers that are part of Masters Academy International. They're really, it's a kind of a fellowship of like-minded seminaries and training centers. They all have at least 2 master's seminary graduates serving as faculty and staff, and so TMAI is what they call themselves, and they will work together to do curriculum sharing. They'll do fundraising together. Their offices are actually in the seminary building, and so there's some kind of overlap between where I work with the outreach missions part of Grace Church and TMAI. So I've got to know some of their staff. Some of you might know Mark Tatlock. He's the head of TMAI, and he's an elder at Grace Church. And I've gotten to know him over the years. He was at the Master's College when I was there as an administrator, and I just really appreciate his love for missions and his heart for the gospel, and even just his leadership there at the church. Every week we've been going through different books from the Puritans with him. He'll get all the staff together and we'll walk through these different books and discuss them. And I just have really grown to appreciate his leadership. And so I'm excited to continue to be a part of the Masters Academy International. So you can see there in the Philippines is where we'll be. And their ministry verse is 2 Timothy 2:2. The things you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. That's kind of their ministry goal. And this is obviously Paul speaking to Timothy, and near the end of his life, encouraging Timothy, I've given you all that you need to be a faithful pastor. I want you to pass that on to the next generation. And I like to imagine, kind of as a metaphor, a chain being forged. I think I've said this before. One link at a time, and each faithful man is another link in the chain, down through the ages. And so that's really what their desire is to continue that process of reproduction and faithful pastors who will produce godly churches. So here's just a little bit about the Expositors Academy, or TEA is how they abbreviate it. Shawn started it by himself in 2007, and it's just kind of really taken off and grown from there. They have 2 certificate programs, and they're working on a Master's of Divinity. I've actually started helping with that already, writing some curriculum for them. You can see they have quite a few graduates and quite a few students already. And you might be wondering, how could they have it says 350 students enrolled, how could they have so many with only 3 families there? Well, what they do is their approach to the training is to do it modularly. So they'll fly into a location and do a class for all the guys in that area, and then they'll kind of do the homework on their own and email it in, and then they'll fly to a new area. They've done this in 13 different locations. Because you have all these different islands, you know, a lot of these guys can't travel around, and so they'll visit them. And so it's kind of like a lot of little hops around to the different islands. And so there's all these guys in different places in the program, and that's why they have so many. They've also, especially like a lot of us during the pandemic, have been using a lot of video conferencing and Zoom, things like that. Shawn sent us this video he made for one of his churches, and he's doing a class on Zoom, and he has 175 people logging in from all these different locations. And so I think moving forward, they're going to do a lot of that as well, maybe to save some of the flying. They also have a lot of partners, guys that have already graduated and that are pastoring churches. The ones that are have good marks and they feel like they're going to follow the approach that they're taking. They'll have them do kind of adjunct faculty teaching, where they'll have classes and things like that. And also, that's part of the reason we're joining them, because they have, it just keeps growing and growing, and they need more teachers, and they need more help with administration, and so that's what we'll be doing. Another encouraging element to see as I've gotten to know this ministry is just how much support they have from the Filipino pastors. Actually the pastor of Shawn's church in Manila, his name is Erwin Kimboy. He's a graduate of TEA, and he also does some teaching for them. It's the same thing in the south in Davao, where Devraj and Tristi are. The pastor of their church is a big supporter of their ministry. He helps teach. His son is at the Master's Seminary right now, and I've gotten to know him a little bit. He works in TMAI, supporting from that side, and he's just so positive about what it's done for their church and just how much it's encouraged them. So it's neat to see how, the people there, they don't see this ministry as a bunch of outsiders coming in with an agenda, which can happen sometimes. We actually dealt with that a little bit in Lebanon. I wouldn't say they were suspicious of us, but there's a lot of people that go through Beirut with ideas and ministry plans, and so I think especially in the early years they kind of held us at arm's length a bit, and so it's fun to come into this context and all of that's, if it was there, it's in the past now, and you have a lot of support from the local guys. Here's a summary of the goals for me personally. I'll be teaching and helping develop curriculum. I should mention this thing, the International Hub. So one of these ideas that Shawn has is to put together a small campus in Manila, just a building where people could come and stay and study with TEA from outside the country. I'll put this map up again. Over the years, there have been people from other countries around the Philippines that have come and studied with them. In fact, one of the adjunct faculty guys is going to Pakistan this month to do a training with a bunch of guys. I don't even really know exactly how they got connected, but somehow they got connected with Shawn and the team, and they are doing stuff over Zoom and things like that, and they're like, we want you to come out to Pakistan. And so one of our guys is going out there. But that's happening more and more, and it's really easy, if there's not a pandemic, it's really easy to get to the Philippines. They have very welcoming visa requirements. If you just show up, you automatically get a 30-day visa. You don't even really have to apply for it. And it's really cheap to fly between all these different countries. And so as that's grown, they've really wanted to cater to these people coming from other countries. And so that's one of the things he wants me to kind of head up, is to build out this hub or small campus where people can come and stay for a while for these modular classes. And then I'll be helping with some administrative support, and Rebecca and I and our family were excited to serve in a local church. It's been a blessing for us being at Grace Community Church again, but some of you know we're living pretty far away. When we came back from Lebanon, the price had gone up quite a bit, and so of housing, and so we ended up getting a house, but it's an hour away from the church, and so we were like, that's not a really good idea, but we thought of it as kind of a temporary thing while we figure out what we're doing with the boys, and that was going along fine until COVID came along, and that slowed everything down, and so we're ready to be close to our church again, and so we're excited about that and being able to serve together with our family. So that's what we'll be doing. Just a few prayer requests for us. You can pray for just wisdom and grace as we get ready to move again. There's just a lot of emotions and different things like that. Even something that's, little details like my daughter, we have rabbits. That's her little pets, and she's really close to them. And we're praying for a good home for them. I think that would help her a lot, be able to leave more easily if we could find. So if anybody knows somebody that wants to have hand-raised rabbits that are used to being outside in cold weather, just let me know.
Are those Audra's?
They're Audra's, yeah. Yeah, there's a family that lives in our town that raises rabbits, and so we got a couple from them. They've been a real blessing, and she's enjoyed mothering them. She's right at that age where that's what she wants to do. So we tried dogs, but I don't know if we're different people or something like that. It's it depends on the dog. Anyway, so you can pray for little details like that. You can pray for the rest of our financial provisions. It's been really encouraging to see so many churches that were supporting us before reconnect with us. So far we have 6 churches that have rejoined, which is just a huge blessing, and some individuals as well. So you can pray for us as we start to travel around a little bit more and connect with people. You know, there's just been a lot of water under the bridge the last couple of years, and so we weren't sure how things were going to go, but it's been encouraging so far. And you can just pray for perseverance and faithfulness, that we'd be faithful to what the Lord's put before us right now. You know, it's easy to kind of start looking off into the future, and especially something open-ended like this. We'd like to go in the summer, this coming summer, but it just depends on how the Lord provides. Excuse me. So you could just pray that we'd be faithful no matter how long it takes. Well, that's kind of a whirlwind summary of what's going on in our lives. So if you guys have any questions or anything, I'd love to. Yeah.
So what is the balance that you need to raise?
It's about, I'd have to look, but it's about $4,000 a month left is what we need.
Okay.
It's less than Lebanon, thankfully.
Yeah.
But our actual salary in Beirut, in Manila, would probably be around $4,000 a month, which isn't too bad if you know about living overseas. But you have to add to that all the taxes, and international health insurance just goes up and up every year, especially with all that's going on. So there's some expenses like that. But yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
What is your projected time frame for making the move?
Yeah, so Shawn would like us there in May. I might be a little ambitious, but the Lord can do anything. So we're just kind of waiting on Him. But we'd like to be there in the summer at the latest. We have to sell our house, but by God's grace, it seems like that won't be much of a problem, because you should see some of the houses that are selling in Fraser Park these days. Like it's been interesting. So that hopefully won't be a problem, but that's kind of good. Yeah, Dave.
The modular approach that you're talking about, do you guys leverage like other organizations for training centers and other churches and stuff for that? How are you doing that?
Yeah, it's a lot of churches actually. I'm not sure if they have a church in every location, but at least most of them. They have a partner church that says, yeah, come and use our building. We want to support your ministry. We'll spread the information. And so that's really how it's happening, is through a lot of graduates who have come to the training. It started out small, where you had a few guys coming, and then it just kind of, over the years, grown from there. And so now they have contacts all over the place that are very positive of what they're doing. So.
And you guys are thinking about building a training center, a larger training center where they come in, or is that what the plan is?
So in Manila it would be like basically buying a building where we could convert into maybe like a dorm or something like that, and some classroom spaces. And I believe that one would be more for international people coming from outside the Philippines. Mm-hmm. But we could use it for people inside the country as well. I think a lot of those other locations, it's more people that don't have the ability to fly into Manila, and so they're going to them to kind of save costs. Like some of the places they go are more rural, and these kind of country pastors that aren't going to have the ability to travel to the big cities. So, but yeah, it's like I said, it's really neat to see this network that's been built of faithful guys.
Very nice.
How many years how old is the network there?
Well, Shawn got there in 2004, and the training center started in 2007. So I would say at least around that year, it was 2006 and 2007 is when he really started to build it. And then the other two families got there in 2014, and so I think that's when he started to get to the point where he's like, okay, I need some more help to manage this. I should mention, normally these days when you want to go to the missions field, it's important to take an exploratory trip. And that was an option for us, but we would have had to wait till the Philippines opens its borders for tourists to come in, which I don't even think it's open now for tourists. And so, we're eager to get on the field. We've lived overseas before, and we know the team and the kind of ministry, because it's very similar to what we were doing in Lebanon. And so I went to the elders and asked them, is it okay if we just forego a trip? And they said that was fine, since we have this experience. And so it's a little funny. I'm giving you kind of secondhand information at this point, but I wanted to explain why. And it's because we didn't want to wait for, trying to make a trip out there. Thankfully, even with the COVID restrictions, it seems like we'll be able to come in on a missionary visa. Shawn and Jessica are working on that, and there's a single girl who's a single woman who's a biblical counselor. She's trained as a biblical counselor from our church, who is out there with the team helping do training in biblical counseling together with Kea mainly for. She's actually teaching in a Christian school out there as well, and she was able to get in just fine on a teacher's visa. So if worse comes to worse, they actually need a computer teacher at the Christian school there, and that was some of you know that's my undergraduate degree is in computers. So if worse comes to worse, I'll go as a computer teacher part-time if we have to get in, but it seems like the missionary visa would work fine.
So when you get there, do you have a place to stay temporary until you get a permanent place? And will you go before the family to make arrangements? Or?
Yeah, no, I think we're going to work with the team, with Alan and Sandy and Shawn and Ransom to find, probably a place to rent temporarily. I should say a little more about the Christian school. There's a place called Faith Academy there, which is outside of Manila near where the Ransoms and the Lucianos live. And the Ransoms sent some of their kids there, and Jessica's come involved with it. It's one of the largest Christian schools in the country. It's a lot of missionaries send their kids there. And, theologically, I think they probably would be in a different place than us, but it's the kind of thing where, it's not heretical. It's just maybe not somebody that we would partner with in ministry. For example, Dorcas is the name of the woman that was just sent out, and the class she's teaching is a psychology class, and she asked them, and I think there's some, especially in some of the descriptive psychology, I think there's some helpful things there, but as you guys know, a lot of it is just very secular approach to a spiritual problem, and it has a lot of humanistic ideas in it, so it's really hard to find useful things. But she asked them, is it okay if I teach this from a biblical perspective, or from a biblical counseling perspective? And they were like, sure. I think they were excited to have a teacher. So she's going through this psychology class and teaching it from a biblical perspective, and so far it's working fine. But anyway, so that school has been, Jessica's been involved in helping them get teachers and training, so she has a lot of experience helping people come over into the country. And so she sent us this PDF, I think it was like over 100 pages of how to live in Manila, and it's for these teachers that are coming over. But I was laughing with Rebecca. It's like I'm calling myself a missionary, but you think about these missionaries in the old days, you just got on a boat and figured it out when you got there. And here I have all this documentation. So it's still going to be quite an adjustment for us, but we're really thankful for their experience and just having people on the ground to help us out. So, yeah.
And you don't have to learn that language, right?
Yeah, that was actually something pretty attractive. I should have put that in there. You guys know we were studying Arabic, and we were making good progress with Arabic. I was able to have conversations with people when we left, but as you guys know, when you don't use something like that, it goes pretty fast. And so part of our decision about not going back to Lebanon was just, we ended up spending a longer time here in the U.S. than we expected, and so now I would have a jump start on somebody starting from scratch, but we just have a lot of ground to make up, and it would be a number of years, I think, before I'd be able to teach in Arabic. So in the Philippines, everything's in English. Like their whole education system is in English. It's one of the largest English-speaking countries in the world, even though a lot of people's heart language is still either Tagalog or Cebuano or one of these other languages. And that was true to a certain extent in Lebanon, but they still, like, for example, they would have a church service in Arabic. And it was in a different dialect of Arabic, mostly. And so, people are like, oh, your kids must be really picking it up fast. And it's like, well, yes and no. Like, they do pick it up fast, but then you go to church and you don't understand very much because it's in a different dialect.
So they actually teach in English?
Yeah.
I know it's the trade language, but...
Yeah, no, it's especially in the cities. like higher education is all in English, and so the training center is all in English. And in fact, a lot of churches are, the service, and this is the distinction I'm making, you know, Philippines is even farther along in the prevalence of English because a lot of churches will do their services in English. Now, it seems, it's hard to understand. It sounds like there's a real spread between people, you know, what their heart language is. Because even if you speak another language really well, when it comes to spiritual things or very personal, emotional things, sometimes you don't have the same ability in the language because it is a trade language or an educational language. And so our plan is to still study Tagalog is what it would be in Manila, and try to get to the point where we can, you know, talk to people conversationally. But it is a real load off our minds that I wouldn't have to get to the point where I can teach and, you know, do a classroom, you know, manage a classroom discussion in another language, because that's a much higher level that you would need. So, yeah, thank you. Yes.
Justin, what's the danger level in Philippines compared to, like, well, I know it isn't a comparison at all to Lebanon, but still,
No, it is.
is it?
Yeah.
So
what's
there is a
funny?
lot of terrorism and a lot of...
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Lebanon doesn't have as much terrorism as people think, and the Philippines has more than people think. So.
Interesting, okay.
About even?
I wouldn't say it's even. No, obviously Lebanon is much more volatile because of where they are and just the history there. In the southern part of the Philippines, they've had problems with terrorism. Some of you remember, I think it was back in the 2000s, there was a big issue with terrorists that took over, I think it was a hotel.
Yeah, Mark Burnham and Gracia Burnham.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had died.
Yeah, I actually knew him.
Well, yeah, so you should talk to Dave about that. Yeah, I'm a little fuzzy on some of that history, but yeah, there's a large Muslim population, especially in Indonesia, but also in the Philippines as well. There's, I think it's a separatist group, or several groups that want to break away from the Philippines. That's more of an issue in the south. I think in the city, especially in Manila, it's not as much of a problem. The challenges I think we'll face are more related to poverty and things like that come with it. Just talking to the team and reading about it, it reminds us, Rebecca and I have been to Mexico City before, where you just have this situation where you have these super rich people driving like these fancy cars around, but then you have these people that are just living in, you know, cardboard boxes, you know, one block over. And so there's a lot more of that, I think, where you just have a lot of poverty and theft. And so just as foreigners that people see as being, I think that's one of the ironies of being a missionary, is you're American, so people assume that you're wealthy, and by their standards you definitely are, but not the way they think, because you're serving the Lord. So that'll be a challenge for sure. But I think it'll be definitely a different, a challenge for our family, adjusting more to the food, for example. Because in Lebanon there were so many foreigners there, you could eat American food. You just had to pay a little more if you could cook it yourself and things like that. And they liked hamburgers. They couldn't find bacon because of the whole halal thing. But anyway, I think that'll be a difference for us. They eat a lot of seafood, and in America, we were talking with Dave and Sherry, or I was talking to Sherry about this, unless you're a fisherman yourself, fish is kind of expensive at the supermarket, and so, we never really ate it that much, and so we're trying to expose our children now to a little more seafood, and you could pray for them. That's a little bit of a struggle. When we were in Beirut, and you'd go to a meal with someone, already the Lebanese food is very familiar. Like, we're used to hummus, and they just have a lot of grilled meat and stuff like that. There's a few things that are a little bit on the edge, like they'll have raw meat, like tartare, like steak tartare kind of stuff, which wasn't my favorite. But whenever you go out to a meal with someone, they always have French fries and they always have pizza. And so as a parent of little kids, you're like, well, we can go anywhere then, because they would have like a fish or some elaborate meal for all the adults, and then they'd have all these other things that people could kind of sample. And so our kids always just had pizza, and I don't think it's going to be like that over there. So.
There's a lot of pork.
Yeah.
And chicken.
Yeah, chicken too.
But shrimp is good.
Yeah, shrimp is good. The fruit, somebody was telling me, it's hot in the Philippines, but the mangoes really kind of make up for some of that. So I'm excited about that.
Coconuts,
Yeah.
fresh coconut.
Any other questions?
Unbelievable.
That's good.
How many rabbits does she have?
She has 2 rabbits,
Oh, 2.
Nora and Velvet.
Sounds like they're both girls, that's good.
Yeah, they're both girls. We didn't want to have more little rabbits. We're very careful about that. The people we got the rabbits from, that, like I said, they raised rabbits, and the wife was telling Rebecca that they had a couple like kind of escape in their, like their yard is enclosed, but they got out of their hutches and they dug down into the soil and they couldn't get them out, and they had babies down there, and so they had, you know, multiplying a lot faster than expected. So we were like, please, just 2 girls would be great.
They're spayed gray.
Yeah, they're gray rabbits, and they're pretty friendly, from what I understand. More with Audra than with me, I guess. And I joke with the kids that we're rabbit people, because those rabbits have never woken me up. Other animals, when you get little babies, like cats, we have cats, and they wake you up. The dogs will wake you up when they're puppies. These rabbits, I didn't even know they could make sound for a long time, and ours never have, so they're great.
When they make a sound, that's bad.
Yeah, exactly. We've never gotten to that point. So. Anyway, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for your questions and your attention. And, we're just so thankful for Grace Bible and just your encouragement over the years. And, oh yeah, and we have some prayer cards in the back if you'd like to get a new one. And if you don't get our emails and you'd like to, please sign up on our email list. So,
But if we already do, we'll still get them, right?
that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We just sent one out, I think, in November, so
Yeah.
that was the last one we sent.
Yep.
All right.